Good evening. Well, I forgot the clicker. Yes, might need that. Tell you what, it's quiet in here now, quiet enough in here now that you got to watch about whispering. I can probably hear you. So how that. Still, it's just amazing how you don't realize how loud those things are until you don't have that noise, and so it is interesting. I use different filters on the live stream. It comes with the OBS, or you can download them from third-party sites, and I had to reduce the amount of background noise that I was taking off because you actually can see how loud that hum was, and so you'd have to take it off so you don't hear it. It just sounds, it's harder to distinguish when you're not in person, that background noise, and so you take it off, but no background noise. On the good side about that, some of you that maybe struggle from time to time to hear, it probably will be much easier for you to hear because, it's those background noises that sometimes cause you problems in hearing things because it's a distraction, it's just overall noise. And so, anyway, it's just, in modern technology, nice sometimes. Can be frustrating others, but it is nice. Anything we need to make mention of before we get going? I'm not hearing anything, so that's good. No news is usually good news. At least we'll take it that way. Now, I want everybody to understand, even though Haley and I will be going, actually we're leaving a week from Thursday, but we won't miss a Wednesday. So anyway, so it won't affect our Wednesday night classes at all. I may be a little tired in 2 weeks, but we won't miss a Wednesday night class. But I will be gone. Not this Sunday, but the next Sunday. Easter Sunday, yes. So I won't be here, so maybe we can find somewhere that have some Easter bunnies and stuff to get some eggs or whatever while we're on our trip. So I'm going to have Larry a cheat sheet so he know how to get everything, work everything, and with the boys. So hopefully the Rice brothers will be here to help do that and everything because it will make things much better. But anyway, we're continuing on the book of Acts, and Acts 6 through 7. Sometimes Acts, the way the story goes in Acts, the way it's recorded, you have, times when you go through almost in a chronological order, events right next to each other, and then there's like a gap, and then it kind of does that. It kind of goes in different things. Don't know exactly how long between the first part of Act 6 where the 7 were chosen. Basically, they filled the role of what we kind of consider deacons, and don't know how long that was before he does this sermon. And so it would be really wide speculation. It wasn't a great deal of time, but exactly what that means, who knows? Because it's not recorded how long it was. It's not that important. But we do know it took place after these 7 were chosen to serve the tables of the Hellenistic widows. One of these men was Stephen. And here we have Stephen more introduced. We got just to the beginning of this last week, and one of the things we talked about was Stephen's sermon, and you can go through, if anything, there's more detail in Stephen's, at least more detail recorded. It could be that didn't record everything that Peter recorded in Acts 2, but the sermons have a very similar tone and outlook. But as we talked about, Peter's sermon, 3,000 were cut to the heart and obeyed the gospel. Stephen's sermon, though, didn't go that well, did it? It incited them to anger to the point they wanted to kill him. Now, there were some things that had been happening between them, and one of the things, and of course the end of Acts 6, after the 7 were appointed, it said that the church grew and multiplied, and even a good number of what were converted? Priests. It was some scary times for those that were Jews. There's been estimates that as many as 20,000 had become Christians by this time. Now, not all of these were from Jerusalem, because we know when Pentecost took place, they came up from all over. And so it could be a good number were not actually from Jerusalem, but a good number were. And so, the average population, regular population, I've read anywhere between 50 to 60,000. We split the difference, say about 55,000. 20,000 is a large number in that number. And so there were some danger times ahead for the Jews. First of all, a good number of the priests. Well, without a priesthood, Judaism doesn't function as it should. Now, what doesn't Judaism have today, though? They don't have a priesthood. They understood the seriousness of it back then, but without a priesthood, Judaism did not function as the law of Moses dictated that it should. And so that's a problem. Other thing is the way the Romans allowed you to have a religion. By the way, the Romans allowed you could have two religions in essence. One religion was your own native religion, and the second religion, if you wanted to adopt Romans' religion, that was always allowed. Anything other than that, you were considered actually an atheist. It's kind of weird. We wouldn't look at it the same way. But to the Roman, if you had a religion that was separate from that, it was considered atheism, because it was a illegal religion in that land. But how was it done? Well, it was based on numbers in essence. So whatever the local ruling authority had, well, if the majority of the people are not Jews in Jerusalem and Judea, well, what does the religion become? How does even the government run? The government ran based on the Sanhedrin. And of course, we studied about the time between the Testaments. And, you had really a butchered look at the way the law was supposed to run. In the Old Testament, who led the people, you might say? Well, at one point you had Moses, then Joshua, then you had the judges. But they really weren't led by any individual leader during the time of judges. And then what rose up after the judges? Kings. So you had the kings. And primarily, at least, at the beginning and even in Judah, what was the tribe of the kings? Judah. Priest. Where do priests come from? Levi, and specifically the priesthood are the sons of Aaron, if you want to be an actual priest. And so we see there was a distinction there. But yet there was this time in between the Testaments. And of course we had the Maccabees, and what wound up being, grown during that time? Who became the leaders of the Jewish people? Wasn't a king, although it was a king because they made themselves kings. But what happened during that time? Who became the power of Judah? The high priests and the Sanhedrin by extension as well. So what you had is you had now a nation governed and ruled by priests and those who were part of the Sanhedrin. But yet, if that was no longer the majority of the people, that would no longer be what would be governing and what would be ruling. And so there was some true fear here. And if you remember, a lot of that was even why they had animosity toward Jesus, because the worry was he would change everything. Well, in essence, he did, and now we're seeing the fruit of that in that so many people responded. Now, how do you plead? Poor network quality. I can't do nothing about the poor network quality. I got a screen on that. Oh well. But anyway, one of these days we're close where it's not an issue. I have great internet at my house now. But anyway, so how do you plead? And we need to understand, and we talked about this face like an angel just briefly. And we talked about this synagogue of the Friedmen. One of the things we mentioned was that how many synagogues were there? Were there just one? Was it just one synagogue? No. I find it interesting how many congregations of the Lord's church were there at this time. One. Now, some people, they really get stuck in traditional things that they don't even realize are traditional things. And I know, I generally lean on more the conservative side on many things that go throughout the brotherhood because I simply like to speak where the Bible speaks and silent where it's silent. But, one of the things that a lot of people took really issue with that I think was a little misguided, and it was because maybe some of the churches that did this, they were kind of had maybe some ulterior motives. But do you really think that all 20,000 met in one place all the time? No. So, is there anything wrong then? Especially, I know the church where James went to when he was in Bethlehem, they had people because of geography, because the church is just not strong there. They had some people that would drive 2 hours to go to church. So they would go, a lot of times they would go Sunday morning, they might have a fellowship meal and eat together because it was such a distance. And then what they do a lot of times is on Sunday evening is maybe some, based on geography, there'd be enough that maybe they'd get together that Sunday evening in some of their homes. Is there anything wrong with that? Like I say, my guess is that's more like what took, just because there was no place that'd be big enough to have held them all. And so anyway, but synagogues, why were there so many? We talked about the big reason why there were so many synagogues, because there were places that they could have met in Jerusalem. For example, when they met for, Passover feast and everything, they would get in, like a lot of times Solomon's portico porch, and it could hold a number of people. But why didn't they do that? Sabbath day journey. And they were sticklers for that. I mean, they were sticklers for it. So you had to, and another thing, they even closed the gates, Jerusalem when it was Sabbath day and other things. But anyway, so very strict limitations. So as a result, Jerusalem was bigger than what a Sabbath day journey would be in some of its areas. So you had to have numerous synagogues. Now, this synagogue of the Friedmen is an interesting synagogue in that there are things we know about it and things we don't know about it. Things we know about it is, based on it was people who had been former slaves. What we don't know is whether or not it was people who'd been slaves of Rome in other parts of the world and had come there, or and maybe been proselytes, or whether they came there and were Jews all along. So we don't know that. We don't know which it was. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It was a synagogue, and this is what we see. And there were people from all over. Now, once again, we don't know if they were proselytes or if they were from that. Now, does everybody know what I mean by proselyte? What is a proselyte? Okay, and it was someone that wasn't by blood born a Jew. Now, there are two levels of proselyte that a lot of times in the New Testament we see play out. There was one level that was mentioned in the Old Testament where you truly became a proselyte in that you became a Jew. You did everything the Jews did. You went through, if you weren't circumcised, you became circumcised. Your families adopted everything that was Jewish. You did all the feasts. And after so many generations, you were considered Jews. Now, there's also another level, a proselyte at the gate called. And the difference in the proselytes gate, they had to stop at the gate of the Gentiles. They were still considered Gentiles. And they typically believed in God, the true God. They practiced morality. Cornelius, that we read about in Acts 10, was likely a proselyte at the gate. And so, but these, if they would have been proselytes, they would have been the full-fledged proselytes. We don't know that, though. They could have just lived in these areas and moved to Jerusalem. But they were from different parts of the world. Anyway, we'll look at it. They disputed with Stephen. They didn't like it. Didn't like what he was saying. But they could not withstand the wisdom and the spirit with which he was speaking. Didn't like what he was saying. Have you ever been around that or noticed that? People that don't like what you're saying, but they really can't say nothing about what you're saying because there's no argument with it. Sometimes, a lot of times in a debate or something like that, what you'll see is when you don't have really an argument, a lot of times you just start going to name calling or something of that result. Just to do anything because you just don't like what they're saying, whether they are right or not. Then they secretly instigated men who said, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and God." Had Stephen been speaking blasphemous words? Well, of course not. But boy, that gets a crowd agitated there. It'd be like, speaking against someone that everybody loved or respected. Maybe like a, famous celebrity or famous, whatever it could be. Maybe it's a school you like in Boonville. Someone just saying something really bad about Boonville, or someone saying something really bad about magazine, or heaven forbid, someone said something bad about Reed's Barbecue. That would be something that get everybody agitated, I would think. You get mad at it. But anyway, so they knew how to get the crowd agitated by saying they're speaking blasphemy against Moses and God. Moses was so thought of. Was Moses a perfect man, by the way? No. Even Abraham was not a perfect man, was he? And I think it's good that, the Bible, one of the things it did, Scripture records these heroes of faith with warts and all. So you don't get a false representation of them. Were they great men of faith? Yes. Were they perfect men? No. There's only been one, and that's what separates Jesus from all these others. They stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him and seized him and brought him before the council. What is this council? Sanhedrin. Okay. So they are the ones in charge, by the way. What they say goes. What was the only restriction on the Sanhedrin, though? What could they not do? Death penalty. The only thing they couldn't do was put someone to death. Who had the only authority to do that in the land? Rome. Romans. So if we see, like even with Jesus, is upset they were with Jesus. As much as they want to get rid of him, they wanted him dead. What did they not do? They didn't kill him themselves, did they? They took him to Rome, to Pilate, and they had him on trumped-up charges, and Pilate's the one that ordered his death. So anyway, and they set up false witnesses who said, "This man never ceases to speak words against this holy place, the temple, and the law." By the way, we've looked at where that room was, where the Sanhedrin would meet. "For we have heard him." My guess is, though, they weren't in the room where they normally met. They were probably out in the open area around the temple because there was such a crowd. Say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and will change the customs that Moses delivered to us. Now, where do you think they get this from? Do people distort words that even we might say? Yes. I think one of the big ones they'll say, things like, "Well, y'all believe in a works-based faith." Do we believe in a works-based faith? No. Couldn't anything further be from the truth. Because the Bible doesn't teach that. Although it does say that we'll be judged by our deeds. about things we do. But we don't believe in the work-based faith. We don't believe that we would have a chance unless Jesus died for us and by the grace of God. But yet there are things we must do. But anyway, people will say things. They'll twist things. And so what was it they accused Jesus of saying? Destroy the temple. Build it back 3 days. And yet what was Jesus referring to? Himself. And indeed, that was true. And so, anyway, they still remember those things. It hadn't been that long. And so they used some of that and twisted around just enough. Sometimes you see this, maybe in the media or whatever, where they'll take something that someone has says, and they'll kind of, put it together, and it doesn't really have the same meaning if you actually listen to someone saying it live. Nothing new, though. I think any level. I remember when I was the city engineer in Springfield, Tennessee. And one of my early council meetings, I was there, and I met the guy that was the newspaper reporter. Back in the day, you had newspaper reporters, and there the paper was printed and was handed out every Wednesday, and I mean, it came out just the day after the council meeting, and so they would always, that'd be the front page news a lot of times, especially if you had like a dog leash ordinance or something like that. Budget never made the paper, but things that were important, like dog leash, trash collection, anything that's really important, it makes the news. And we were debating whether or not to take a traffic signal. Let's see, no, take a four-way stop sign down and ultimately put a traffic signal up. And it had been debated, and so anyway, earlier that night, the guy that was newspaper reporter, he introduced himself to me. I introduced myself to him. Next day in the paper, I opened it up, front page news about this intersection, and I read it, and it says, City Engineer Jim Bradshaw said, and I'm like, well, I didn't say a word. Now, I was a little impressed, though, because he basically, what he said, I said, would have been something probably like I would have said, but I hadn't talked to him at all about that. So anyway, nothing new, but they take these things, and so anyway, and all gazing at him, and all who sat on the council saw that his face was like the face of an angel. Face of an angel. I think that, it's interesting, because if someone said you have the face of an angel, it means a similar thing than what they would have said meant back then. What do you think was about Stephen? If someone had actually done something wrong, what do you think they would have looked like? What would you expect that someone that was just speaking evil words, what would you expect him to look like? Oh, yeah, black hat on, or he'd be, he would just look menacing, That's not how Stephen looked. And he wasn't angry. He wasn't, just violently saying, no. He looked like he had the face of an angel. Acts 6:8, full of grace and power, was doing great wonders and signs among people. Now, don't forget that before this sermon came out, Stephen was doing miracles. They couldn't withstand his wisdom and spirit with which he was speaking. Not only had he been doing miracles, but he was speaking in a way that they couldn't overcome in a logical manner. He had the face of an angel. Matthew 18:10, see that you don't despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. One of the most special things about angels is, where are they? Who are they in the presence of? Yeah, but who are they in the presence of most of the time? Well, let's look at Gabriel. It says, that's the answer. They're in the presence of God most of the time. Luke 1:19, and the angel answered him, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you to bring you this good news. Now, there's something different about angels. Now, Moses. Remember when Moses first went up into Mount Sinai? First time, the burning bush, and then you remember he went back again. He was there, and what changed about Moses? Did he look the same before and after he went up and was in the presence of God? Eagle love. There's something a little different about angels. There's something special. And so Stephen, they could tell there was something special about him. They didn't like him, didn't like what he said, but there was truly something different about Stephen. And so anyway, the high priest said, "Are these things so?" So they're going to let Stephen speak and plead his own case. Now Stephen, unlike Jesus, but yet it was prophesied, for the most part, what did Jesus do when they interrogated him? Didn't say a word. Whereas that fulfilled, read Isaiah 53, fulfilled prophecy, but also they'd already made up their mind what they was going to do with Jesus, so it didn't matter. But yet it fulfilled prophecy. Stephen gives a defense. He gives a defense. Now, here's the thing. Had the verdict already been determined? I believe so. I don't believe there was anything Stephen could have done. The only thing Stephen could have done is probably said, "You're right, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." They would have let him alone. At least I believe they would have. What do we often do when we're confronted? I don't know much about what he believes or anything, but I recently read a headline. Herschel Walker. I remember him from football. One of the things I remember about him is I remember he used to run the 100-yard or 100-meter dash. He ran the 60-yard indoor dash. And when the world record for the 60-yard or 60-meter, I forget which it was, the guy that set the world record, the guy that finished second and would have also broke the record was Herschel Walker. Now, what was impressive about it is the guy that broke the record, he was probably about 5'6" to 5'8", probably weighed about 140 pounds, and Herschel Walker is like 6'4", 230 pounds, and is just a beast of a guy. And yet, man, how fast he was. Of course, great athlete. So I remember him, similar age. I remember some of the things he did. Anyway, he's running for Senate. And I saw a headline, and it said, "Herschel Walker don't believe in evolution." Saying it's a bad thing. Saying Herschel Walker believes that God created the earth in 6 days. And I thought, oh, good for him. Good, Anyway, but that's not how they were taking it. But how do we answer things like this? Do you really believe in creation? Like God did? Do you really believe that? Surely not. Science says that's not true. By the way, that's not really quite true, but, they like to go with that. There you go. Why is their explanation even better? By the way, there are all kinds of things that we can allude to, but I remember, it was a documentary about It's Genesis history, I think, and it went through things about flood and some other things. And one of the things they pointed out was there's a paradigm that people have convinced themselves of. Those that want to believe that there isn't a God and that it's through evolutionary processes over billions of years, they have a paradigm that can't be breached by what even the truth is. And if you notice, when those on the evolutionary side, they are constantly having to change what they believe. And a lot of things, even like maybe you've heard of the Big Bang, but did you know it's been more than 20 years that the legitimate scientists, the ones that are intellectually honest, they have said the Big Bang don't work. It violates physics. It's just not right. And yet that's what you hear about. And still, probably in a lot of science books, it says Big Bang. And yet, even the ones that believe, by the way, where did life create? I like this, and I remember Ben Stein, a guy that was an economist, and he's done he was probably the thing that made him the most famous. He played a school teacher on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he's the one that said, Bueller. But anyway, he was actually an economist and worked for the Nixon administration. But anyway, he did this documentary thing, and he interviews, what's his name? Sir Richard Dawkins, who is said to believe maybe the smartest person IQ-wise in the world. And he's from England somewhere, and he's a big-time atheist, and he does debates and everything. Well, Ben Stein didn't tell what just told kind of some of the things about the interview, but didn't say where he was, which side he was on, and conducted an interview with him. And by the way, my understanding is Richard Dawkins was furious when he saw what it was about. But anyway, one of the things he asked him, he said, Big Bang can't work, and how did life begin? And he said, we don't know, but it was likely through some type of evolutionary process. But what caused that spark, we don't know yet. And he said, what's your best guess? And he kind of buttered him up by how smart he was and everything. So what's your best guess? And so he goes, well, the running thought now, the best guess is that there were entities from other places, other planets that came and germinated the spark of life that was here. And so he says, so you're talking about aliens? He said, yeah. So anyway, then and the kind of voice over there. So basically, the modern atheist had rather believed in little green men somewhere, basically putting life here instead of an almighty God. Which one actually makes more sense? Well, that's another problem with that. And so, any way you want to slice it, it just doesn't work. Creation answers. But anyway, what do you do when someone says that to you? What about, you don't really think it matters if we use instruments of worship. It's certainly not a salvation issue, is it? What do? You don't think that water can really save one, do you? Or... Now, I don't know. Do y'all get that? Did y'all get this growing up here? Growing up in Tennessee, we got this all the time. Oh, y'all think that only members of the Church of Christ are going to heaven. Did y'all ever get that one? Have you ever heard that one? Okay. So what do y'all do? What do you do? How do you answer this? Do you take a step back? Do you, unlike Stephen, say, well, you're right, I'm going to, we're wrong, we shouldn't do that? What do you do? Now, I want to tell you something. If you want to be respected, what you can't do is step backwards. But there are ways to answer these. Each and every one of them. You believe? Well, yes, I do. Would you like to talk about why I believe that? In fact, I got a lot of information why scientifically creation fits as well as any other theory that you can come up with. What about, does it matter instrument of music? Well, I'd like to talk to you about that too. Basically New Testament times. And by the way, one of the things you get a lot of people from different denominations is I've got a series of quotes from people they respect. They consider maybe people that had, the reason that denomination's like it is, either the Baptist Church or the Methodist or whatever, the people they look up to as their scholars. You go to any of them, if they got books that they read of scholars, they'll have these men, and to a man, every single one of them would say, even in the Roman Catholic Church, by the way, St. Thomas Aquinas, they all say that instrumental music is not authorized by the Bible. And they go even beyond. I forget which one it is. It says, so they don't have any problem with pianos, as long as it's not seen or heard, And so in worship now, And so anyway, a lot of times they're like, they really said that. I said, yeah, it's because, anyway, you think that water can save you? Well, you can turn to 1 Peter 3:20 and 21. Think that only members, now, the last one needs a little tact because they don't understand. If you were to say it, they don't understand what you mean. So you have to do it in a different way. You have to say, well, the Bible teaches that only Christians are going to heaven. And a lot of times you can turn that around and say, would you like to study what the Bible says about how you become a Christian? Well, like I say, would you like to study how you become what the Bible says about how you become a Christian? Now, they'll either say yes or no, but they can then choose to do that. Because only those who are members of the church, the body of Christ, and you can emphatically say that, are going to heaven. Because that's what it is to be a Christian. Now, once again, some of people are not going to like that. In fact, a lot of people are not going to like any of those answers you give. Peter, they were cut to the heart when they heard what Peter said. Stephen, they were made angry. So they're going to react one of two ways. Stephen goes on, and we're out of time, so I don't want to get into, I think Rick has the lesson. But anyway, read this, and we'll talk about it briefly next week, about what he talks about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He talks about Joseph being sold in slavery. He talks about Moses in the Exodus. He talks about wandering. And his conclusion is that they are stiff-necked. Where did that term come from? Did Stephen come up with that term? I believe that's what God called those wandering in the wilderness in Exodus 32. So we'll talk about that next week. Read the rest of Acts 7. Appreciate you being here.
Good evening. I hope everybody's doing okay this evening. Yes, we are, right? Everybody doing okay? Good. Anything that needs to be updated, announced, prayer list updates, anything of that nature that we're aware of? That's good. Yes, in some cases. All right, well, it's time to begin our devotional period. Larry Carson's going to word our opening prayer. I'll need someone to word the closing prayer at the appropriate time. Rick Scott will have a devotional, and I will be leading us in a couple of songs for the devotion. I'm going to try. I'll do my best. The first song, and then Larry will have a prayer for us. Number 18. Oh, I was getting to it. I just want to make sure everybody got ready. Number 18. Faithful love. Faithful love flowing down from the throne, Calvary round, makes me whole, saves my soul, washes whiter than snow. Faithful love calms each fear, reaches down, rising spirit, my
in the night, guiding my way. Faithful Lord, came to earth to show what is love, and down there we must sing, for I see faithful love face to face, and Jesus is His name.
We thank you, Heavenly Father, for this day and for its many blessings. We're so thankful for this opportunity of being here tonight. We can look into your word and your teachings for us. We just pray that you would be with us in our studies, that we can grow stronger in your truth, be more like-minded to your will. Thank you for Jesus, whom we can lean upon, draw strength and encouragement from. Help us to strive to walk in His footsteps, that we too can be the light of the world, the salt of the earth. Thank you for your Son, for His sacrifice. Thank you for loving us the way you do. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. Just ask you to help us on our life's journeys. Help us to know that we can lean upon you, that you can carry us when we're unable to stand alone. So continue with us through this night and keep us safe. Thank you for each and every blessing that you bless us with. Help us to be full of others, and help us to resolve in our minds that we will take your word to this neighborhood, to our friends and families, loved ones, strangers, any that will hear your word. Continue now with us as we listen to the devotional message. Thank you for Steve for leading us in these songs. Be with Rick as he brings us the devotion. Forgive us, Heavenly Father, as we do fail you from time to time. Help us to learn from our mistakes and our weaknesses and grow stronger in your will. We do ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
The invitation song will be number 791. 791. The song before Rick's devotional, number 23. 23. There is beyond the azure blue a God supreme inside. Each and
In our plans that we have to start mailing out things, contacting individuals that we haven't seen in a while, we're sort of thinking about different things we can do. Well, if you've ever had a chance to go into our workroom over here, there's a big rack. We've had that rack for many, many years. And in that rack, we have got lots of tracts. And I've sort of chosen some here that we've been collecting just to do a little review of a few, one in particular, that if someone has a chance, would like to start looking through those and sort of categorizing them in different topics that we could use to send out. That would be great. So the one I've chose tonight to look at is called 8 Things You Will Never Do in Heaven. So as you think about that, probably the first thing you might think of is some of the songs that we sing that have to do with heaven. And starting out, wanted to sort of set this up for us. Pam and I always enjoyed watching Fixer Upper. That's Chip and Joanna Gaines from Waco, Texas. They would go and they would take the worst property on the best and fix that house up. People would either be interested in it or whatever. So one of the big things that they would do after they've done all the work and they've done all the renovations and they let the people come and look at it like they haven't seen it over the past, 6 months. But they would have this huge picture on wheels of what the house looked like before. And then the people would be standing there. They wouldn't be able to see the front of the house after it was all fixed up. And they would ask, hey, are you ready to see your fixer-upper? And they would pull it from both ends and reveal the house after it's all been fixed up. And, of course, the people were very wowed, amazed at it. And they would go in and look at the inside and see all the things that's been done there. So with that in mind, when we think about heaven, what will heaven be like? We know that Jesus said that there's going to be some rooms there that's being prepared for us. He told his disciples that. And so let's look in a sense, heaven is not going to be here on this earth. This earth is going to be destroyed. It'll be no more. But if we were to look at our life that we have known, even after we have fallen asleep and that trumpet of the Lord sounds and we rise, we perhaps think about the world as it is, as it was when we passed from the earth, and all the things that we did while we were on this earth, and that big reveal is made when we're able to go into heaven with Christ. What do we think it's going to be? We've got some information, description of what it's going to be like. We sing the song Mansions Over the Hilltop. We sing the songs about the streets of gold, and and all kinds of things. And one of the things that Jim brought up in the class, about, and I'd heard it too in my life a lot about members of the church always think they're the only ones going to heaven. And so the little idea was, they had some Christians that were walking into heaven. They were walking into the big mansions that were there, and they said, well, you got to be really careful. You got to be real quiet, because in this room here are members of the church, and they think they're the only ones that. So it don't make sense. And so you have all those types of things, those thoughts that we hear and that we realize. But there are some things on this earth that we will never see in heaven. And so think about that. Just 8 things you will never do in heaven. So I'm going to ask some little participation now. You've had a little time to think about it, of some things that we will never do in heaven. Who would like to start? Never cry, because what does the song says? What does the Bible says? No tears in heaven, no sorrows given. So we understand that. There are tears on this earth, and for various reasons. But when we get to heaven, there will be no tears. All right, so what's something else? And there's lots of different feelings about that, isn't it? We hear a lot of things about whether we will recognize those that have gone before. Yes. Well, our body's not going there. We won't have a choice about the spirit. But we think about those things. So here's something. How many of you have turned on a light switch today? There will be no light switches in heaven. Why? There's no darkness. God is its light. It's going to be light all the time. I don't know how we're going to go to sleep at night, but hey, there's no night either. So those types of things, that's not going to be there. It's going to be completely different. People have some thought or idea that heaven is going to be just like it is here on earth, except different in some ways. But it's totally going to be different. There's so many things that won't be there. All right, let me think of another one here. When you leave your house, did you lock your door? When we park in the parking lot, how many lock the doors to their car? Someone did. All right. So there are no locked doors in heaven. Why? Why do we lock doors? Why do we lock doors here? What? There's thieves here. That's right. Do what? Have you ever had your car stolen? So you won't be looking for your key when you get to heaven, sir. So, body, we need food for the body, right? Sure. Yes. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word. No evil. That's right. There's a different place for that. Right? So we won't have to worry about locking the doors. All right, what about a cemetery? Because there's no death. Death's the final enemy that will be destroyed. There'll be no death in heaven when we get there. Have you ever been tempted? I think we all have at some point. Well, there'll be no temptation there. It's just not going to be there. No temptation in heaven. It's not going to be there. What about sickness? We've lately, we have visited, we've prayed for, we've heard of so many people who are sick from various scales of sickness, from flu, fever to point of death. But there will be no sickness there. No sickness. So there'll be no doctors, no hospitals, anything like that. Have you ever been around an older person? I'm not going to say old person, but an older person. Guess what? They've got wrinkles, our eyes and our hearing goes, but not going to be there in heaven because it's eternal. We're going to be raised with a new heavenly body that's imperishable. What about medicine? Think we'll have to have medicine there? No sickness, no reason for medicine, right? So we think about these things that we will never, ever experience or we won't do in heaven. Is it things that we're going to miss? No. We're not going to miss those things. Huh? Well, you won't need. You'll be on a eternal diet. And so when we think about individuals of this world and things that are important to them, the tract as it ends, it says that don't you want to go home? You will need a passport signed, I guess, who? Jesus Christ. A man may go to heaven without health, without wealth, without fame, without name, without learning, without earnings, without culture, without beauty, without friends, and without 1,000 other things. But he cannot go to heaven without Christ. So some of the other tracts that I've chosen, and we'll look at those later on, is how to increase your spiritual passion. Why is it important for us to be passionate spiritually? That's something for us to think about, because it's very important. What God needs from the next generation. We've done this lots of times when we are here and we look over a congregation, and I've heard people say, that you're just one generation away from not having anybody here. So we need the next generation. But there are certain things that the next generation will offer. When I read this, I got to thinking, Paul. We read so many of his writings because his writings really make up most of the New Testament. And we know the background of Paul. And I got to thinking, how old was Paul when all of that began? And there's really no good way to tell. As far as they can tell, he may have been born maybe about 3 AD or something like that. I think he was about 30 when Jesus met him on the road to Damascus. He went away for about 14 years, he says, before he came back to Jerusalem. But Paul was probably about the same age, maybe a little younger than some of the other disciples. Think about the things that Paul did. It was a change of culture and a change of things that enabled him to do the missionary journeys that he went on, go to the places, far away places that he went on by ship or by foot or wherever else. And that was what God knew that Christianity needed. That's what Jesus knew that his church that he built needed, was that individual, that generation, to expand and go beyond what was typically how you did things during the time of what Jim's been talking about next. So there's always a need. There's things that we gain from that next generation. So just a few thoughts for us to think about and to consider. If you get a chance again, go in and look at some of all kinds of subjects, but we'll be using those. We hope that maybe within a year's time that rack will be empty, and we'll get all of that information out into the hands of people who need it most. If there's anyone here this evening that you might be able to, maybe you need prayers or some thoughts to share or something like that, then we offer this opportunity to be able to stand and sing.
Father, we give thanks to you for this opportunity that we've had to come together to be one before you as we study your word. Help us to always intentionally consider ourselves as one when we worship, when we sing, when we pray, that our emotions may ascend to you, not as one, but as all. Help us be unified, not only with ourselves, but with you, with your Son Jesus, with the Holy Spirit, that we may all be one together, as you intend for us to. Bless us, Father, as we leave this place and go about our daily lives, that we will think less and less about the material things of life and more about the eternal things. Be merciful, forgive us when we fail. Thank you all in Jesus' name.